Hello, my name is Kira Petty, and today I'm going to be talking about dissociative disorders, particularly dissociative identity disorder, also known as DID. So, before I get started, I first want to introduce dissociative disorders as a whole and explain to you guys what they are. So, according to the DSM-5, dissociative disorders are commonly associated with the disruption and discontinuity of an individual's consciousness, memory, identity, emotions, perceptions, body representations, motor control, and behaviors. They can affect almost every part of an individual's daily life and can be ultimately life-changing. They include dissociative identity disorder, dissociative amnesia, depersonalization/derealization disorder, and unspecified dissociative disorder. However, as I mentioned before, today I will be telling you guys about dissociative identity disorder, also known as multiple personality disorder or DID. When going over DID, I'm going to go over what it is, what some of the symptoms are, the diagnostic criteria, why an individual may develop DID, what their daily life may look like, treatment offered for individuals with DID, and then stigma. So, what is DID? It's a type of dissociative disorder that's characterized by an individual having two or more subpersonalities. In some cases, such as Dr. Adrian Fletcher, who has 22 subpersonalities, individuals can experience 2 to 20, 2 to 100 subpersonalities. There's really not an exact limit that has been found when it comes to how many subpersonalities an individual with DID can have or develop. So it is still an ongoing research process. And while many think that these subpersonalities are simply emotional shifts that an individual experiences, it's actually very important to understand that these subpersonalities can have their own distinct memories, behaviors, and preference when it comes to their self-image. According to our textbook, The Fundamentals of Abnormal Psychology by Comer and Comer, DID was first reported 3 centuries ago, and it is reported that only 1% of the population has experienced DID in 1 year or experiences DID in a year. However, theorists believe that this percentage is higher than 1%. Some symptoms of DID include memory gaps, strained relationships with coworkers, family, friends, depression, anxiety, or even unexplained injuries and painful sensations. In order for an individual to be diagnosed with DID, they must exhibit 2 or more subpersonalities, present gaps in their memory, and experience disturbances that can't be explained by other conditions. And when most individuals who end up diagnosed with DID initially seek treatment for mental health services, they believe that they have depression, schizophrenia, or borderline personality disorder because of the overlapping of symptoms. Most individuals are diagnosed as late adolescents or early adults, and it's been found with research that women are diagnosed with DID 3 times more than men are. Now, what are subpersonalities? Subpersonalities, also known as alters, are think of them as their own being in another being. So they can be any gender, they can be any age, they can have their own names, and they can serve certain roles or functions when it comes to an individual's daily life. These roles and functions can include parental roles, protective roles, rebellious roles, and even friendly roles. And subpersonalities can struggle with their own issues. For Dr. Adrian Fletcher, she found that her subpersonalities, or some of her subpersonalities, actually suffered from substance abuse, learning disabilities, and disordered eating. Subpersonalities are developed as a result of traumatic or stressful events that an individual experiences in their childhood, or most likely in their childhood. They represent certain personality traits that have been developed from these events and serve as kind of like a shield. So these traumatic events can include abuse, neglect, sexual assault, an experience of natural disasters, loss of loved one, and so much more. So behind me, I have a poster, and this is Faye. This is our main individual. She's 23 years old, and she has been diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. Now, I didn't assign a specific trauma because there are so many that can be found to develop DID. But I did give her subpersonalities. So Faye has 3 subpersonalities that she knows of because it is found that while you may think you have 3, an individual can actually develop more subpersonalities later on in life. So she has Ren, who is 6 years old, and Ren's role is kind of a shield for Faye's inner child. She then has Dylan, who is 16 years old. Dylan represents her teenage rebellion, or that's the role she plays. And then you have Naomi. This subpersonality is 33 years old and serves as a parental or protective role of Faye. All of these subpersonalities are results of trauma, and they each represent certain aspects that trauma implemented onto Faye as she grew. So daily life for individuals with DID, or in this case Faye, includes rapid switching of subpersonalities, and this switching can happen multiple times a day. So an example of switching is, say Faye is with her friends and she experiences a trigger that reminds her of a traumatic event she experienced as a young child. One of her subpersonalities, in this case I'll use Naomi, will switch and will show, you'll see signs of the parental and protective role. Because switching can be a very vulnerable time for an individual, due to how fast it happens and how impaired that individual can become, individuals with DID have been susceptible to self-harm and suicide attempts, and their daily routines can be very challenging because switching leads to confusion about what they may have been doing or experiencing at the moment that their subpersonalities were switching out with them. Treatment that's offered with DID, there's multiple aspects of treatment. The main one being psychotherapy. According to a study done on DID by Saxena, Tote, and Sapkale, psychotherapy emphasizes the trauma an individual has experienced and encourages frequent communication with the patient's subpersonalities. So cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a form of psychotherapy, addresses an individual's behaviors, emotion, and thoughts. And with the use of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, a clinician will communicate with not only Faye, but all of her subpersonalities to gather these behaviors and thoughts and emotions. Often paired with CBT are medications like antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. So individuals will often be prescribed selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, also known as SSRIs, serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, also known as SNRIs, and benzodiazepines. An individual can also have the opportunity to attend family therapy to promote diminishing relationships and schema therapy to help manage their DID. Like other mental health illnesses, receiving a diagnosis and then treatment for DID can be hard due to misrepresentation that DID has received in the past and in the present. Because of movies and books and society itself viewing DID as something that's dramatic and can be potentially violent, um, there has been a lot of stigma that surrounds DID and other mental health issues. Dr. Shirley Davis, who is another individual that has DID, has had experiences of people asking if her disorder is fun or telling her that they hope to never meet someone with DID because they would be terrified of them. Due to this, she had trouble sharing her diagnosis and living with her diagnosis just because of the way the stigma made her feel. Knowing about stigma is important because without knowing about the stigma, it is harder to address issues when it comes to mental health. The only way to combat stigma is by learning information about disorders in which are stigmatized and educating oneself and others to recognize misinformation and replace it with accurate information.